Notre Dame is past the halfway point of preseason camp, and the roster is really starting to take shape. So, which position stock is up and which position stock is down? That's all coming up.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. And today is Thursday, August 15th. And thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. My name is Tyler Wojciak and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018 and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. And this show is free and available on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. For those of you watching along, remember, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you're listening to the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Okay, in just a second here, I'm going to be joined by Luke Smith to cover a wide range of topics. We're going to talk about the new Hard Knock style documentary that's going to be covering Notre Dame here in the preseason and after the regular season. And then we're going to go through every single position group on the roster and just do a little check-in about how we're feeling now compared to how we felt about that group before the start of camp. And then at the end, some interesting academic news about Notre Dame that's actually related to the college football playoff. Enjoy. All right, it's great to have Luke Smith back with me here. We have got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today now that we're past the halfway point of Notre Dame's preseason camp. But before we get to our camp check-in, we got to talk about the big announcement that came out on Wednesday. Notre Dame football's Hard Knock style show will debut on Peacock August 29th. It has been rumored for a while. Now it's official. Luke, how excited are you to watch it once it comes out?
You know, I'll be excited as long as Peacock actually puts episodes up when they say they're going to, unlike HBO Max with Hard Knocks last night, which I didn't look actually yet today to see if they've resolved that issue, but a lot of people were very unhappy with that.
I saw that. It's up now.
Okay, there you go. Maybe I'll watch that after this then. But yeah, as long as they do that, I'll be excited. But no, the reality is when Notre Dame did a season with my freshman year of college, I thought it was pretty well done, and it was cool to see friends and kids I knew in that show at different points, whether it was just in classes with players or Peter Hennigan, shout out him, taking a fall break trip to Dublin with Jerry Tillery. Although I'm not quite sure that the Showtime cameras captured everything those guys did over there.
Thank God.
It's kind of funny looking back that he's in that episode.
Yeah, I really enjoyed A Season With once it came out. Like every week it was appointment television, which is rare. You don't get a ton of appointment television these days, but I was always excited. That was also a good season to follow that team because it was a really fun year back in 2015, some highs and lows for sure, but they had it right. That team had a ton of talent. They were poised to have a great year, and then seemingly every other week a starter was lost to the season with an injury. This year, it's going to be a lot different with this Peacock show. So the release schedule goes like this. They're going to release episodes 1 and 2 on August 29th, and then they are not going to release another episode during the season. So it's not really like Hard Knocks. They're going to wait until after the regular season is over. Then December 5th, episodes 3 and 4, December 19th, episodes 5 and 6, and the final episode will come out January 16th. So I saw a lot of people excited about the show, and then when they saw the schedule, they're like, what the hell, what's going on here? So what do you make of that?
I do wonder what those early December dates, like what are those episodes even going to show? That's going to be interesting to me. But to me, it's kind of the most like Marcus Freeman thing ever. You give fans and media what they want with more access in some ways, while also making it extremely convoluted and inaccessible in other ways. So it seems pretty on brand for that. But I do wonder if this is one of the lessons learned from A Season With, which, for example, originally showed Ronnie Stanley being named as a captain, and of course that was revoked thanks to NDSP and the horrific parking situation on campus. So I wonder if they took some learnings away from that and said, let's have some more directorial, editorial power over this thing.
Do you still have any unpaid parking tickets on the campus of Notre Dame?
I went in there a couple days before I graduated because they were making a big stink about it, saying like they weren't going to give me my diploma or whatever. And I just basically said I had this crippling ankle thing all semester. And I think they made me pay like 2 of them because I had like 12. So that's kind of how I got out of that.
I heard a couple people that still had unpaid tickets, and I think one of them.
I don't know how they did that.
Something.
Yeah, because a lot of people, like, they threaten not to give you your diploma. So
Yeah, and they were not afraid to hand those out. That is for sure.
No.
But going back to the documentary, I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be really exciting to have access to the team this way. Yes, it's weird that we're going to have to wait a while, but the timing of it works out so that when they release these in December, it'll be like 2 days before, I think like the 19th. That'll be 2 days before first round of the playoff. And
Right.
then the last one will be 2 days before the national championship. So I don't know if that was on purpose or they just needed to put some time on the calendar in December, but it's going to be a fun look into this team. And it's something, there's a line in the trailer from Howard Cross where he's like, you can tell this year is different. There is a ton of hype around this team. There has been all summer long. And now that we're getting close to the season, it's really interesting because there is so much hype. There's so many expectations about this group. We all know year 3 pivotal for any Notre Dame head coach, specifically Marcus Freeman as he enters year 3. But they have got a really, really tough game to start the season against Texas A&M. As of this recording, they're 2.5-point dogs. So on one hand, you've got these out of this world expectations, but they're underdogs in the season opener. So how do you make sense of the hype in contrast to the fact that they're expected to lose week 1?
It's very interesting. And you also then, on the other side of that coin, Vegas has still set their over-under win total at 10.5, which is, I think, the highest it's been that I can ever remember. I don't remember a higher total than that, to be honest. I think that there may be, with some of the more national people, there's this notion that Notre Dame is ranked highly because of their schedule, and there is a ton of credence given to the fact that it's an extremely talented defense. And so there's this notion that the preseason ranking is a projection of how they should do against the schedule and not really how talented this team is. And I think people that have probably studied that would realize this team is a lot more talented than it typically has been.
Without a doubt, specifically the defense, like you mentioned, Riley Leonard is a big name, but you and I have vocalized our concerns about him before, and I think that's actually a good segue into the bulk of what we want to do here today. We're going to play a game called Stock Up or Stock Down, or it can remain the same, where we're basically going to go through every position group on the roster and just say whether the stock is up with that group, whether it's down, or if you feel about the same way as you do now compared to when you did before the camp started, because I think there's been a lot of chatter about some groups doing a little bit better than we might have expected. And then there's some positions who might not be quite as good as we expect, at least as we sit here today at the halfway point of the preseason camp. Let's start with the quarterback. How do you feel now compared to when camp started?
I'm stock up right now. If you recall, I was not the biggest fan of Riley Leonard, the Duke quarterback, nor was I the biggest fan of dipping back into the portal again for a quarterback. It felt like diminishing returns to some extent. However, there does seem to be a competitiveness about this guy that has been missing at that position for a while. And I think that that's exactly what this team is going to need to be able to go into College Station and win the game, especially with an uneven or unproven offensive line.
So I agree slightly. My stock is slightly up, and as anyone who's listened to this knows, I am excited about what Riley Leonard can do as a runner. I do have my questions about him as a passer. And as we get closer and closer to the season, the one thing that really comes up often is how much of a competitor he is. But one thing that really has stuck out to me is how highly the defensive coaching staff talks about Riley Leonard. One, because they had a game plan against him last season when he was at Duke, and now that they're going up against him every day in practice, like they speak glowingly of the guy. And that's not to say that they didn't do that last year with Sam Hartman, but I do think it's pretty telling that Max Bulla, Al Golden, two coaches who don't really throw compliments around a ton, speak very highly of Riley Leonard and the pain that he causes on opposing defensive coordinators. I'm very concerned about the fact that he's going up against Mike Elko, his former coach, who knows him inside and out in the first game. But my expectations for Riley Leonard are higher today than they were at the start of camp, so I'm saying slightly up.
Yeah, all right. Then I think we're mostly on the same page.
All right, let's go to running back. How do you feel? Up or down?
So I'm slightly down here. I do expect Jeremiah Love to have a tremendous year. That's kind of how I felt going into camp, though. I will say some of the noise around Aeneas Williams has been promising. However, I do think, and this is a little bit conspiracy hour, I do think it's weird how little chatter there has been around Jadarian Price, and he's not really been seen in any of those videos that our name has put out. It seems like the beat has not really talked about him a whole lot in practice reports either. And if you go on the message boards, a lot of other people are onto this as well. It's a maybe the worst kept secret that he wasn't super happy last year with his playing time. So I don't know what's going on there, but that's something I'm monitoring.
I like Conspiracy Luke. Do you think that it could be a quiet suspension, dare I say, or just the fact that maybe, I don't know, this camp hasn't really gone as well for him as he would have hoped?
Yeah, I'm thinking more the latter and a potential like transfer. Like that's what I'm thinking. It's not really a suspend. Well, also because the guys that have had those quiet, unspoken suspensions in the past, I think were a little bit different than Jadarian Price, and there were pretty well documented things that they had done.
And let's be clear, this is all speculation. We do not know, but it is telling.
It's weird,
that he has not been included in any of the videos. We know that the practice viewing has been extremely limited. He's out there. He's with the team. He has been practicing. There was one picture I saw after the Charles Jagasaw injury. The Notre Dame football account tweeted a picture of Tosh Baker and Emil Wagner. It said something like reload. In that picture, Jadarian Price is running the ball. I personally am not very concerned about Price. I just think it's a weird coincidence. I think he's going to be playing. I think he's going to be fine. I do think he's the number 2 back. So for me, I feel pretty much the same. Positive reports about Indias Williams are good. He could be the short down back. He's extremely strong. Apparently he's been really good in pass protection, but nothing that has been said publicly or has been seen has really changed my mind. But the Jadarian Price situation is something interesting, and we will certainly continue to monitor. All right, how about the wide receivers? They have hurt us in the past, but there's been a lot of good things about them so far in camp.
So I'm stock up here. It seems like Bo Collins just might have been playing in a Mickey Mouse offense the last couple of years. When you couple the testing numbers that everybody's reported from him, as well as just the production he seemed to flashing on the practice field, he might be due for a really big year. And speaking of really big years, the way that Mike Denbrock talks about Jaden Greathouse makes it seem like he is going to be a number 1 receiver on a team with a lot of number 2 receivers. And even further past that point, I think that the chatter around guys like Jaden Harrison and KK Smith is even promising when you're not really probably going to ask them to do a whole lot or contribute a whole lot, but it seems like people are high on them too. And to that end, we're not having conversations about Deion Colsley, and that's a guy who has actually made plays in games before, and he's kind of forgotten. Like I forgot he was on the roster, to be honest, at one point during this camp.
I'm also stock up mostly because of Bo Collins. And to be honest, I was not super high on him throughout the summer. I thought it was a good add in the transfer portal because Notre Dame needed more guys, needed more veteran guys who've actually gone out there and made some plays before. But I just looked at his numbers. It was like, okay, pretty solid. His numbers last year had over 500 receiving yards, but like over 130 of those came against, I think it was like Charleston Southern. So that didn't blow me away. But it does seem like he is really impressed so far in this camp. He's really twitchy. And when you look at who is going to start for Notre Dame at wide receiver, it felt before camp, it was like, okay, Jaden Greathouse, and then who else? Well, now it's Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse, and then the third guy is anyone's guess, really. And I wanted to ask you about Chris Mitchell because it's basically the opposite of the Jadarian Price thing, right? Where he's not on any of the videos or any of the pictures, really. He's not the focal point of any of the content that Notre Dame football is willing to release to the public. But they have already posted 2 clips about Chris Mitchell. But then there's some people on the beat, some people who've been watching the receivers closer, like, I haven't seen him make one single play since he started at Notre Dame. So it seems like Notre Dame is saying, hey, here's all the good stuff. And yet in some of the practice viewings, he hasn't really shown out all that much. What do you think about him as a player right now?
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of him either. And I'm trying to think of examples of this where Notre Dame has like kind of created these hype videos in the past for guys and they haven't panned out. I feel like there are some examples, but off the top of my head, I can't pinpoint them right now. But maybe that's what we're trying to do here, sort of speak these things into existence. I
can't remember one where the team itself was promoting a player who wasn't worth a shit. And this goes back to my point.
It's a couple when Jordan Johnson would get in there.
They posted like a picture of him making a catch, and I think it was most people were just, they were freaking out. The Jordan Johnson thing is like a great psychological test about fandom and how fans are so convinced that a player should be playing, and they just dismiss the fact that the coaches are with these guys all the time. Chris Mitchell, the thing about him is he's actually proven that he can play on a college football field. Like he has numbers that are really good. And yes, he was playing for Florida International. He wasn't going up against great competition every single week, but he had a big game against Arkansas. And I just think the fact that they're pushing this along, I mean, Mike Denbrock said that he believes that Chris Mitchell, or he thinks Chris Mitchell is going to be their deep threat. He's not going to lead this team in receptions. I think he's going to have more of just a deep threat role or maybe tunnel screens. Like he might not have 5 to 7 catches a game. He might only have 3, but I think it's going to be allowed 3. So I'm still optimistic, even if he doesn't run out there with the starting unit, because I think that's actually going to be Jaden Thomas as the third guy.
Okay, not to get us down a whole another rabbit hole here, but now that we're on the media topic, is it a really bad sign that Cam Williams is the guy doing the interviews around the team? Because if you look back at who that guy has been, or like had that mic type, it was Braylon James last, and then who was the bum safety with the tiny mic? Avijon, Litchfield. Yeah,
Litchfield.
That might be a really bad sign that Cam Williams is that guy. And I'm saying that obviously facetiously, but not really. Like, let's get him out of that role.
Litchfield Adjavon was his name. I knew I could picture him. No, I haven't really thought about it like that. Yes, the last 2 interview guys definitely were not that great. But if you think back to when Notre Dame was doing like Trick Shot Friday, when they were doing the player created content, I feel like those guys were actually good.
I feel like
was that back in 2012?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of that was walk-ons, to be honest. But I guess there were some like key players involved in that every now and then. I don't know. It's just I'm monitoring that too. That's a little bit scary.
Cam Williams is doing it more too. I don't remember Braylon James doing it like every single week.
No, but they would be promoting like Braylon James' rap song
and
all that. Yeah, so I don't know.
I'm not concerned about Cam Williams. I know that some fans are already getting worried about him because he's not going to crack the rotation. Look, it's so much different than last year because Notre Dame actually has good players in that room now.
Sure.
If Cam Williams were on last year's team and he wasn't playing at all, that might be a cause for concern because last year's room was so terrible at certain points in the year. Like you look at the Duke game, and that's a big reason why Braylon James is like, what's wrong with me? I'm not playing when you're playing all these other freshmen. As we have since found out, he just really wasn't that good of a player last year for Notre Dame. So I'm not worried about the Cam Williams things, but it is another thing that we will be monitoring. Okay, speaking of monitoring, Mitchell Evans and his recovery from his torn ACL that he suffered last year against Pitt. Seems like his recovery is going really well. He's been out there. He's been practicing without a knee brace. Has that changed your mind about the tight end room at all? Stock up or stock down?
That is why I was stock up because I wasn't sure that he was going to be able to go for A&M, just given how serious that injury was. But he is, it sounds like, and kind of without limitation, which is critical. And there's a serious argument that this is the best position group on the offense. When you look at it, you throw Davis Sherwood in, they have 4 guys with receiving touchdowns in Notre Dame uniforms under their belt, and that's as many as the receiver room has. So that's no small thing there.
It might be a small thing.
Per capita, it's a much greater accomplishment.
Given what that wide receiver room has produced. But it's obviously much different now with Chris Mitchell, Bo Collins, and Jane Harrison. I'm going to say the same because I was pretty optimistic about Mitchell Evans and his recovery timeline because it felt like way back in the spring, people were like, oh, he's way ahead of schedule. So I was not that concerned about Mitchell Evans. I was way more concerned about Benjamin Morrison because of just the vagueness surrounding his injury. But it sounds like he's been out there ready to go. I don't know how much contact he's been involved in. I also don't think media has been able to see a ton. Like he's been out there when they were doing like just shells or when they had no pads on at all. But, it's a lot different when you got to get there and make a play in the running game. So I don't know if we're going to see that from Benjamin Morrison until week 1. But right now it seems like he's in a much better place than I thought personally. Okay, offensive line. I think this is probably an easy one.
I don't know how it's not stocked down. We already lost both tackles going into this year. And when you lose the starting left tackle, there's just no way to really spin it. I don't feel that great about Tosh Baker, a 5th-year guy who's never won a job starting because 5th-year guys who think they can play would have left a long time ago. So that's not great.
I'm also stocked down, which is not great because I was down on the offensive line to begin with. This is a big loss. And, as I've said before, when you're trying to equate how big is the gap between Jagasaw and Tosh Baker, it's really hard to decipher personally because we have seen very little of either one of those guys. But just the fact that the coaching staff did not hesitate at all to put Charles Jagasaw in at the starting left tackle spot last year, when that really wasn't even the position he was always playing. And you compare that to the fact that Tosh Baker, they say, is a more natural left tackle. It means the gap is pretty significant. coming from the coaches who see him every day in practice. So I am also concerned. That's not to say that he can't develop and get better as the season goes along. He could certainly be serviceable, but it is the most important position on the offensive line. And I think that there's a hole there right now. But I will say one positive thing about the offensive line, it does seem like the interior is probably better than we might have expected, specifically the combination between Ashton Craig and Billy Schrauth. The left guard spot, still a battle ongoing. Looks like Pat Coogan is leading that right now over Rocco Spindler, but even if Rocco Spindler comes in second there, he's going to be the first guy off the bench at either guard spot. But I think that Billy Schrauth and Ashton Craig are going to be really good, and then whoever ends up at left guard is going to be good enough. So Notre Dame has concerns at tackle, but I do feel better about the interior of that line.
No doubt about that. I do think it's kind of interesting. It almost sounds like people are projecting Craig as the best offensive lineman of the bunch, and then Jagusah was projected to have the most potential of all of them, but I feel like maybe people are sleeping on Schrauth a little bit. I still expect a monster year from him this season.
We'll be right back with Luke to go over whose stock is up and whose stock is down on the defensive side of the ball. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting baseball tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch with great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets, whether you've been planning to go to a game for weeks or if you're feeling spontaneous and you decide you want to hit up the nearby ballpark. Gametime is the perfect place for you. I've used Gametime a bunch in the past, including last week, and it is always a great time, all thanks to Gametime. It is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase, and you can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. But my favorite thing about Gametime is the pricing shows your total cost up front, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's switch over to the defense and look at the defensive line. A lot of hype about this group, a lot of grown men playing there. Has your perception about them changed at all?
It's about the same. We've heard some promising things about Heinisch, Burnham, Batello. However, not having Gabe Rubio until the middle of October, I think, maybe later than that, and potential concerns about Howard Cross and injuries. The impacts of that range from making this group not elite because they don't have the depth they need to truly having deficiencies if Howard Cross has issues that force him out of action. So that's giving me a little bit of pause.
So to go over the timeline with the Howard Cross thing, he said after a practice, he hurt his hamstring in the summer, and it's been sort of a nagging injury. He's still been out there participating in practice, and then I think it was last Saturday, the media saw him leave practice earlier, or he wasn't a full participant. There were some questions about whether or not he suffered a new injury or he re-aggravated his hamstring injury. And then Notre Dame came out and basically doubled down and said that no, it was a load management thing. It's his 6th camp. He doesn't really need to be out there that much, but they are being a little bit cautious considering he suffered that hamstring injury. I fully expect him to be out there starting against Texas A&M. I think he's going to play. Notre Dame is fully planning on him being ready to go and play that full game. But hamstrings, they don't really go away, especially when you're in the middle of a season. So I am a little bit nervous there, but I will say a mature Jordan Batello is intriguing. This is a guy who fans have been expecting to break out for literal years now. It has not happened, but it seems like he's kind of figured it out. He's much older now. He stuck around when he could have left and probably gotten maybe more playing time at other schools, but he stuck around. And I think that if he finally has that breakout year, that will fix a lot of problems. Any other concerns on this defensive line about injuries and things like that?
Totally. And you're right. The hamstring thing is no joke. I never really appreciated just how much your reliance on your hamstring until I had that sort of injury myself last year. And obviously I am not a good athlete. I'm just like trying to walk around, but it's brutal. Like it lingers for a long time.
Yeah. So it's something to monitor, but I'm not that concerned. It's just, again, something that you don't really love to hear, but it's August 14th. There's still 2 weeks. I assume he's taking it pretty easily in practice, and he doesn't really need the camp reps as much as other guys. Okay, linebackers, stock up or stock down?
So I'm actually going to say I feel about the same here because I thought Jaylen Snead was going to have a very good year this year, and everything we've heard from the coaching staff and practice reports suggests that that will be the case. So I thought he was kind of due. Year 3, he was finally going to hit, and it's trending that way. I also thought Kingston Viliamu-Asa was going to have a very strong freshman season, and it sounds like all the reports on him are very positive. That's not to say that he's going to start week 1, but I think he will play in College Station, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's starting by midseason. However, I'm still not really sure how to feel about Drake Bowen, and I don't know that I totally buy Jack Kaiser still as an every down guy, as was well documented. I think the last time I was on this podcast, I need to see it to believe it. It's not saying I'm doubting it. I just I need some proof, and I wonder where Jaden Ausberry fits into all of this. So there's definitely some good things here, but there's still some uncertainties in my mind, and that's kind of why I'm staying the same.
I'm going to go stock slightly up because even though I was really encouraged by what I heard about Jaylen Snead after spring practice, I was like, all right, let's see how he does in camp when all the players there were getting close this season. And the way that Max Bullitt talks about him and the fact that he's going to have a really big year does change things, because I looked at him as like the X factor. Like, okay, this group is a bunch of young talent. They can rotate. They can do a bunch of different things for you. But who is that playmaker who's out there basically just wrecking games? Like, think back to when we were at that Georgia game back in 2019. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was literally all over the field, and there's nothing that Georgia could do to really stop him because they didn't really expect that from him. I'm not saying that Jaylen Snead is going to be the same player that JOK was, who, by the way, got paid. I want to say shout out, go Browns. But if he puts it all together, he's going to wreck games, and specifically that Texas A&M game, because he has the type of speed where he could keep up with all the 5-star recruits that stuck around at Texas A&M. So his impact is going to be felt early, I think, and that's why I still feel stock slightly up about this group.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. We'll see with those other guys.
All right, let's lump the corners and the safeties together. How do you feel about the defensive backs?
Stock up. This should be the best defensive backfield Notre Dame has had in a long time. They've got 2 of the best defensive backs in the country in Ben Morrison and Xavier Watts. It sounds like Adon Schuler has had a huge spring and summer and potentially could start over Rod Hurd. I don't know if he will in week 1, but I think at some point he definitely might. And I think Christian Gray is probably going to start at the other corner over Jaden Mickey, which is exactly what I wanted to have happen. So, and that's not to say that Jaden Mickey can't contribute to this team. I think he will significantly. Yeah. But the fact that Gray has kind of established himself as that guy, I think is a big deal. And this group in itself should make a massive difference in the opener in College Station. I think they'll be able to shut A&M's passing game down completely.
After the first day, I was like, might be stock down when Marcus Freeman publicly was like, yeah, we need a 4th corner. One of these freshman cornerbacks has to step up. And I was like, that's not good, because they lost Clarence Lewis and Micah Bell to the transfer portal. They looked in the portal to maybe add a defensive back to add some depth. They didn't get it. So when he said that, I'm like, damn, he's calling out freshman corners. Well, it looks like Leonard Moore stepped up and he has a real chance to be that 4th corner, which is good because you need 4 quarterbacks to rotate in there. I also feel a little bit better about Jordan Clark. It just seems like the way that these coaches talk about him, he could be right up there with Thomas Harper and Tariq Bracy, which is not something I would have said last year or at the end of last season.
2 months ago?
Yeah, but it seems like the hype around him is legitimate. Benjamin Morrison is healthy. Christian Gray is going to be a stud. I don't know if they've come out and said that battle is over, but it does seem like it is. Like, Christian Gray is going to be the starting field corner. And then, yeah, you mentioned Adon Schuler. Like, the fact that he's even competing to start with Rod Hurd tells you a lot about his growth, because Rod Hurd has played so much college football. It seemed like a seamless transition to put him back there at safety. And now you've got this young guy who is probably more of a playmaker than Rod Hurd is. Now he can play back there. I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for the defense. So I'm with you. Stock slightly up for the DBs. All right. Last but not least.
Side note, Leonard Moore, just a great cornerback name. Like, it sounds like a guy that would have been playing on those Urban Meyer Florida teams back in the 2000s. So great corner name. That's all I want to say.
Is it better than Julian Love? I still feel like that's such a good corner name. Maybe the best.
Too much Nazareth in that one.
That's fair. All right, special teams. I think I know where you're going with this one.
Well, considering I questioned if James Rendell even knew how to punt the last time I was on this program, the reports coming out of camp have to change my perception of this position significantly. So I'm going to go stock up.
He's been described as a weapon, and that the team is just watching in awe when he punts the ball. That's great to hear. I'm sure he's going to unload on the ball a few times. I mean, my God, he's like, what, 6'6"? He's a punter. Like, First of all, that's insane. I love when Tim Priester from Irish Illustrated suggested that they run out there in punt formation and then they just bring Rendell in to run the Wildcat. Got a good kick out of that. I know he's kidding, but still, I mean, maybe he will go out there and run a fake punt. We've not heard that much about Mitch Jeter. It seemed like he had a good first day, and that's been pretty much it. I felt like he was going to be automatic coming from South Carolina. I think he's missed, 2 field goals in his entire career. Is the lack of noise around him concerning to you at all?
Yes. Is he also in the Jadarian Price boat? He's not, because he's a kicker, and who cares about kickers? But no, I get your point. It's not concerning to me.
Okay, good. I will say this last note on Rendell. I'm sure he's going to boot some this year. I just have this feeling that his first punt against Texas A&M, it's going to be like a dribbler. It's going to be like, But that'll get better. They'll get those jitters out of the way. It's always like the first field goal of the season is destined to miss, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's no shot. You get a mulligan on the first one. Let's hope that doesn't happen in College Station, because you and I are going to be there. I don't know if we talked about this. I haven't mentioned it before. I am going to be at that game. And I don't know how I feel about it. I don't. For the listeners, I don't have the best track record at Notre Dame.
He's got the worst, actually, but I don't think it's on him. So we'll see how this goes. Man, it's going to be hot down there. I'll tell you that much.
It's going to be hot, and I've been seeing videos of the 2019 Georgia game. I think like the pregame coverage of that game has been circulating on social media. It's like all of these like college football hype videos, like 2 weeks until this, and then it's that. And you and I were both there. Absolutely unbelievable atmosphere. Not a fun finish. I mean, obviously the vibe around that game was so much different because Notre Dame was like, 17-point dogs. I don't think anyone was giving him a shot. They played great. They came up short. The
scary as hell that's 5 years ago.
I wish you didn't say that. The last road game I went to was, I don't count Dublin, but I was at that game. That was a home game for all intents.
Probably that one, right? Was it Georgia?
No, it was USC with you, 2022.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad one.
That was.
I think I really tried to forget that one with just.
You know why I remember that? Because you and I were getting a beer right at halftime. We're standing in line. We're standing next to Tariq Bracy's dad.
Yeah.
And that was when, out of nowhere, Bracy just didn't play in that game.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, man, like I told him to get out there. And he's like, Dad, I can't run.
He did have one of the funniest lines where he was saying basically how Notre Dame should not have lost a game that year. And then he walked it back and said, except Marshall, they actually kicked our ass.
And then we're watching, like, the third quarter had started. Notre Dame starts driving, and that was the Drew Pine fumble. And we don't have to say what he said, but his reaction was absolutely priceless in that moment. Okay, hopefully Texas A&M game is going to be a lot better for us. But yes, we will be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully. All right, last thing. This caught me off guard. Came out a couple days ago. Notre Dame is going to move their final exams at the end of the first semester because of the college football playoff. Per an email sent to students, Notre Dame has adjusted its final exam schedule with the 12-team college football playoff in mind. They used to end, or they were planning on ending on Friday, December 20th. Now they're going to end on Thursday, December 19th, because the first playoff game will be that Friday. What do you make of it?
It kind of scares the heck out of me, to be honest. I don't like putting the cart before the horse, and I don't mind planning in the background. Sure, like you got to be prepared for any situation, but some of the chatter, both within the program, at the leadership, administrative level, it's not really the Notre Dame that I'm used to.
Yeah, the way that they are talking about the playoff is like, oh, it's going to happen. On one hand, it's jarring, but on the other, it's like, okay, look, like you do have to prepare for it. Mm-hmm. I was honestly surprised that people had finals on Fridays. I don't think I ever had a Friday final.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think I might have one time, but Yeah, maybe one time. That's all I can remember.
That'd be like cruel and unusual punishment because by the end of finals week, I am just not even a human, just like so
Right.
exhausted. Tired, brain is spent, haven't gotten a good night's sleep, probably haven't had like a good meal in days, and then having to extend that out till Friday is insane. But then the fact that a playoff game could be happening that same weekend would be a lot more exciting. It'd give me a lot more fun to look forward to as opposed to just the cold winter. That's another thing I thought about too, is how it was always so snowy and so cold during finals week. Notre Dame could be playing a home game in that weather. I know that, like, obviously, yeah, a home game in December in South Bend is going to be cold, but like that is like one of the worst parts of the entire year on campus. So that game would be really interesting.
It is, but climate change is a real thing. I know you've been out west for a while now. It's the last couple of years on Christmas. It's been like 50, 60 degrees. So it might not be that bad after all. And I just said that and probably jinxed the heck out of it, but that's been the reality the last couple of years.
Yeah, you probably now Chicago's going to get like a snowstorm in mid-September.
Inevitably, yes.
All right, that is all I got for today. Luke, next time I have you on, we're going to have our preseason awards. It's one of my favorite things to do every year.
Yeah.
We're going to hold off on doing the preseason awards until literally the week leading up to the season because I believe camp ends, Yeah, I think it's actually coming up here because then they prepare for Texas A&M for 2 weeks. But we are going to wait to do preseason awards because we're going to be highlighting specific players. I do not want to jinx any of that. So we're going to wait a few weeks.
That's smart. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right, man. I'll talk to you then.
Sounds good.
All right, that is a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I'm going to be back right here tomorrow morning with Locked On recruiting insider Brian Smith to break down Brandon Logan's commitment, some receivers that Notre Dame is trying to flip, and of course, we're going to talk about Deuce Knight. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Football Podcast with Spencer McLaughlin. Also, be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Same time, same place tomorrow, guys. See you then.